Hello, and welcome to, oh geez, what are we up to? Episode 7 of season 2 of Email and More. Bear with me while I share my screen. Here we go. Alrighty. So, I am your moderator, Skip Fedora, and for those of you new to the show, on every episode, we showcase a different topic with a different panel of experts. Today, we're talking about shiny new tools. Now, as you know, this is really your show. We bring together the experts, but it is your questions that drive the conversation. It's unscripted, it's unrehearsed, and it's a whole lot of fun. And we want to know what your burning questions are about new tech, how to choose it, and how to keep the shiny from being a distraction. So please ask your questions using the Q&A button on the right-hand side of your screen. And please feel free to use the chat for everything else, like chatting or letting us know how we're doing. Now, if your question is really specific, and in today's topic, you could have very, very specific questions. If it's really specific to your tech stack or quite complicated, it may be better to hold it for the roundtable discussions after each panel. Or after this panel. There's only one panel, so after the panel. Each speaker will be available to answer your questions, so be sure to pull up a chair, turn on your camera, plug in your mic, and join us as we keep the chat going in a more informal setting. Actually, we've got a special surprise for you on the round tables, so wait till the end and I'll let you know what that is. Now, so in addition to chatting with our amazing speakers and meeting other email marketers, one lucky roundtable participant is going to win a Kindle copy of Kath Pay's new book, Holistic Email Marketing, best-selling book, great book. So join the roundtables to be in with a chance to win that. Now, before we go any further, we should take a moment to thank our sponsors. So this series is brought to you by our gold sponsors, Iterable and Validity, and our silver sponsors, Email Expert and RPE Origin. We want to thank all of our sponsors for everything they do to make this series possible for us to bring this great content to our audience. Now, if you want to go back and catch up on any of the great episodes from Series 1, or you need to catch up on Series 2 so far, you can find them all on YouTube or on Holistic Email's site, and we'll make sure we put a link in the chat to that great content. So the title of this episode is Shiny New Tools, Solutions, or Distractions. And as marketers, we always seem to be chasing the latest technology, the hot new channel, and the latest buzzwords from the conference circuit. It's what I like to call Magpie Marketing, being distracted by that shiny new thing rather than sticking to the fundamentals and optimizing the things that we are already doing. The real question is whether or not the magpies are getting it wrong. We've put together a brilliant panel today that's going to help us answer that question. So with me, as always, is best-selling author and this year's recipient of the EEC Email Marketer Thought Leader of the Year, is Kath Pay. That's a lot. We need to shorten the title of that thing. That's a lot of words. So if you're
at
out
least
there,
I've got a short name.
Yeah, thank God. If you're out there, EEC, come up with a different name for this. Anyway, Kath is obviously from Holistic Email Marketing. Also from Holistic Email Marketing, we have CRM consultant Adiola Sol.
Hi, everyone.
Hey, Adiola. Now, unfortunately, we were supposed to have Deborah Badu from M&S International, but she's a little under the weather, so she won't be able to join us today. But that's okay, because we have my good friend and purveyor of all shiny things, Chris Marriott, the president and founder of Email Connect.
Great to be here. So
now,
am I to understand that this is the 7th in this series? You waited till the 7th in the series to hook me up? We'll have a little chat about that, Skip.
Hey, it's not me, mate. I'm just the host.
Well, that's
anyway,
okay. We'll talk about that.
Talk to the producers. Anyway, folks, while you're getting your questions in the Q&A area, I'm going to stop sharing the slides, and I'm going to ask our panelists to introduce themselves. And since he's already interrupted me, I am going to get Chris Marriott to introduce himself. Did the slides not share?
They did, but then they turned off before the speakers, or just like after the speakers. So that's okay, because we're here.
Yeah, okay. I don't know why that happened. Anyway, Chris, why don't you introduce yourself?
Sure. I'm Chris Marriott. I'm the founder and president of Email Connect. I've been in email marketing on the vendor side since 2005, and then running Email Connect for the last 10 years. And our focus is on helping brands, enterprise brands, through the RFP and vendor selection process. So we see firsthand. I think I was delighted to get invited to this because we see on a daily basis how brands struggle with what to focus on when they're looking at vendors through the vendor selection process. And we also, see very clearly how vendors think about how they can differentiate themselves and what shiny new things that they might want to launch. And so I'm really looking forward to the conversation because I really, we see it on both sides of the equation, the people launching the shiny objects and the people looking at them and wondering what they should think.
Excellent introduction. Thank you, Chris. Adiola, over to you.
Hi, everyone. I'm Adiola, and I'm one of the CRM consultants at Holistic Email Marketing. I think some of you may know me. I've been frequenting these Email and More discussions, so I'm really excited to actually be on the other side. I work very closely with Kath, and we help our clients not only make decisions in terms of what ESPs to go for to suit their business objectives, but we're also, we like to kind of investigate what's out there. I must admit, Chris has got a gem that he won't share with us until the end.
It's coming. Got to be here to the end.
I feel slightly behind in terms of what's going on in the email world since Chris has dropped that he has a secret gem. So, we're all here to learn, and I'm really excited to be here today.
Adiola, you're right. Chris does have a gem, and he does like to keep these little secrets from us. And I think you're being too modest, saying, "Oh, I've been quite involved with many of these chats." You were the original host of this series, and some big shoes to fill, I have to say. So, welcome back.
Cheers.
And last but not least, Kath, I can't believe anybody doesn't know who you are, but go ahead, give it a go.
Hey, thanks, Skip. I'm Kath Pay, CEO of Holistic Email Marketing. We're a boutique consultancy, work closely with Adiola on, as she said, lots of wonderful projects, but also one of those things too that we do is, as Chris indicated, we help to give our clients focus so that they can understand, what tools will benefit them, not to necessarily just go, ooh, do the whole shiny, the Magpie shiny sort of tool type thing and say, oh, that looks really, really good. But actually help them to identify what features and tool sets and everything is actually going to help them to achieve their objectives. So we come from a very strategic basis. And as Skip said, just written a book. And if you join the roundtables, you might be in with a chance to win a Kindle copy. So hope to see you at the roundtables after this discussion.
Fantastic. Thank you, Kath. Well, we've already got our first question in from the audience. I might as well just jump right in from our good friend, Dr. Matthew Dunn. Every fundamental was a shiny toy at some point. Shouldn't email teams, however overworked, methodically budget resources for the experiments to make data-driven decisions about new tools and techniques?
All right,
yeah,
I'll step up.
I like that.
I'll step up to that because it sort of opens the broader part of discussion, because I think the whole concept of bright, shiny tools, again, martech, marketers and martech in particular, I think of us as a school of fish where we tend to, one of us gets distracted and we all turn in a direction, and something becomes very hot for a while. And then oftentimes everybody ends up disappointed because what was bright and shiny is really dull and clunky. I think the real drivers. So I'm going to disagree with Matt that everything doesn't deserve to be looked at. A lot of the bright and shiny that I see coming into the email marketing place is driven by vendors who are trying to differentiate their platform and offering from other vendors that in a marketplace that is often perceived as a commodity, incorrectly, but often perceived as a commodity. So they introduce things that separate themselves. And the fundamental problem that most of the bright and shiny objects that the platforms themselves introduce is, and Skip, you in your setup, you really talk about this, is they overshoot the practitioner. And by that, I mean that the vendors are trying to get the attention. They're really holding up something bright and shiny to get the attention of the C-suite, saying, look, we're different. We're business transforming. We've got these things that are going to change the way you do business. And the actual practitioners are yawning, saying, that doesn't make us more efficient. That doesn't help us in our day-to-day business. And in fact, it doesn't make much sense. And I'll give what I think is one of the best examples of this that happened over the last 10 years, which was the idea that platforms could suddenly retarget through display advertising email openers. And the ones that introduced it thought it was going to get so much attention and so much adoption. But again, what really happened was the email practitioners were sitting there going, well, A, I don't control display budget. B, why would I ever why wouldn't I just send another email to an opener rather than hitting them up with a display ad? That makes no sense to me, the email practitioner. And to me, again, a perfect example, the vendors thought bright and shiny, makes us stand out, makes us look multi-channel to the C-suite, but the practitioners yawned and said, not interested.
Well, and on top of that, depending on your attribution model, which is a different discussion for a different day,
I was going to say
there's no way as an email person I'm going to hand the benefit of the sale over to the display people.
Right.
The display people. the other side of the office.
I totally agree with Chris, but the one thing I do agree with the question basically
Matthew.
is if you're going to be doing something, and again I do agree, maybe not everything, but if you're going to be looking at something, you have to be doing an experiment, doing a test. Don't just blindly follow through with it and just say, this is great, I've got friends that did this, I know that this brand uses it and everything like that, because then we're riding the trend. And we know that as email marketers, well, digital marketers in general ride trends, right? And as email marketers, we're very, very susceptible to trends because we're always looking for that silver bullet, because we don't have the budget, the time or anything, but we need to be improving our results. So we're going, well, if they're all doing it, then it must make sense. I'll assume that they've tested it out and that it's working for them. And so therefore, off we go, right? Now, that's the biggest mistake. And there's huge amounts of examples of this. One of the one that comes to the top of my head was, do you remember, with websites, and they had the revolving, what are they called?
Carousels.
The carousels, right? And everyone said, oh, how sexy is that? Oh, we can have multiple products. We can have multiple topics. We can have multiple services. How amazing. Let's just go. And they just all blindly went and did it. After a year or so, and some clever brands actually tested it, they found out that if you're using a carousel to promote the one product, the one service, it makes sense because you're able to actually sell them and educate them on more of the features of that, right? But if you're doing it for multiple, it actually loses you money. So, and you've given over your valuable real estate. And that's an example of a trend that happened. Everyone went with it blindly, and it lost a lot of brands a lot of money. And, that happens in the email world all the time.
Yeah, that's true. It does. It does. And if you missed it, we spent our last session was talking about experiments and testing and stuff like that. So go back and watch the last episode to learn more about how to do that. Adiola, what do you think? Is especially the point about every fundamental is a shiny new toy at some point.
Yeah.
And I guess the most obvious one of that is I'm old enough to remember when email was the shiny new toy.
Yeah, and I and this is the thing, I think the key word there is the fundamental, and that's kind of like, that's what's stuck in my head, because you actually don't know what is a fundamental until you start working with it, until you start testing it, until it becomes adopted. So everything at some point is still a shiny new tool. And so like Kath said, it's about being pragmatic. It's about understanding and doing your own research, your own testing. But I do think there is scope to explore whatever it is that a new ESP may have to offer, providing that it fits within your business objectives. So if there is something new out there, let's say AI can, I'm making something up incredibly, but let's say it can build your email for you, create all your segments, choose your subject lines, blast it out there. Perhaps that might be really useful for a company where the product is more or less the same. In other essence, it's just rehashing different segments and just pushing through people through a funnel. Maybe that's something you might want to test. It may work for your size, your business, your company, whatever. But then for others, it might not necessarily be a great fit. And that's where testing comes into play. So, and eventually things like that in terms of automated and becoming so much more automated, where it's content, now it's subject line, where it's segmentation adoption and so forth, that may now become a fundamental, because people are moving into a form of automation, and automation is becoming the goal that most marketers want to aim to. But in the beginning, it is a shiny new tool. And I'm not saying that AI creating your entire email subject lines and choosing your segments and all of that is what's happening right now, unless that's what you're going to say later, Chris.
No, Chris is going to say.
I'm not going to say that.
You just put a whole bunch of people out of work, so we're definitely.
And I was going to say it kind of makes us obsolete, but so yeah, I think it is worth definitely investigating. Just bearing in mind whether or not it suits your business objectives, it gets you to where you need to get to, and as Kath says, you're doing the necessary testing.
So, Adiola, you touched on a really interesting point there that I want to kick over to Chris. It ties your two answers together, actually. So, Chris, you were talking about the vendors aren't selling to the practitioners because, frankly, the practitioners don't have the budget authority or the sign-off authority, and they want to get the attention of more senior people. You mentioned the C-suite, and that's been a challenge for email marketing forever. Email marketing, much as we love it, not sexy, and from a budget perspective, not C-suite worthy in most instances, not in all, but in most. So, what have you seen much incidence of the C-suite is actually chasing the shiny new tool and forcing it upon the practitioners, and the practitioners are like, no, and then you get friction between, they've bought something that just isn't getting used, sort of like half the toys I bought for my daughter.
Right. I mean, there's a couple of pieces to that question that, to use a phrase common these days, I'm going to unpack. First of all, I would say that in my experience, the practitioners are the ones who are making a lot of the decisions in a vendor selection process for email marketing. And so they're exactly the ones the vendors should be talking to, because, an example of how vendors are thinking differently these days, how many ESPs call themselves ESPs anymore? They call themselves almost any number of customer experience platform, marketing automation platform, multi-channel. They run from the label ESP, and the brands are thinking, no, you're an ESP. And give me some credit as a brand to understand that the definition of ESP has changed. And now an ESP means more than just sending email. It means sending multi-channel communications. It means automated and triggered emails just as much as promotional. But in my mind, it's still an ESP. So again, I think vendors make a big mistake when they pitch to the C-suite, because they're not making the decision. It is the practitioner. And again, practitioners will follow their own sort of bright, shiny objects, and they're just different to what the C-suite does. What I think is interesting about the C-suite, when they get attracted to a bright, shiny object, they will say one thing and do another. And what I mean by that is, when you do quantitative research with CMOs and others, and you say, what is your interest in AI? And you get 20% have already deployed it, 50% are going to deploy it in the next 12 months, and the rest in the next 36 months. And it's just utter nonsense. And what they're saying, what they think they should be saying, it's like, do you like baseball? Yes, I like baseball. But you might not like baseball, but you're supposed to say, yeah, I like baseball, or yeah, I like football or soccer. But so they say what they think they're supposed to say, but they end up not really doing it, and so they break the vendors' hearts again. They break the vendor's heart when from an email perspective, their company makes decisions based on things that interest the email, and they break the vendor's heart a second time when they profess interest in these bright, shiny business transformational things, but they don't act on it because the nerd is a very, very powerful force in the MarTech world, and change happens slowly.
You know what, I see your point, and I think it's very valid in terms of ESPs have actually rebranded themselves. And it's really interesting because I've actually blocked that out. So even when they call themselves e-commerce evolving platform or whatever sexy name they give themselves, I'm just like, oh yeah, it's an ESP. But what I have understood is they've expanded and they have a plethora of solutions so that it makes sense for the C-suite to buy into them. So it's not only are you going to spend this crazy amount of money on email marketing, but guess what? We can support your digital marketing. We can support your e-commerce initiatives. We can even do direct mail if you want us to. We can even go onto social and match back from email and match back from your in-store and blah, blah, blah. And all of a sudden, C-suite becomes enthralled in everything that they have to offer. But what is missing is the drill down. They forget to drill down and start to look at the finite details. How are you actually going to leverage email marketing? How are you going to leverage e-commerce so that we can manage the two, codependently or independently from one another? And that's when big tools get brought in because of, like you said, the shiny nuances of these revamped ESPs. But the fundamentals are lost. And that's what happens when they begin to grow so big. They lose out on the fundamentals. There's one ESP, and I won't mention them, but it's a very big ESP as well. And it's really interesting that you can't replicate segments within this platform, and you can't copy. If you have multiple, let's say you're a multiple retailer, so you're one big parent company, you have multiple brands underneath your company, but you all want all of your brands to sit within one ESP, so you can toggle between your different brands. Unfortunately, you can't lift a template, let's say from one retailer, and just copy that HTML over to your next one. For me as a marketer, that's a fundamental, and those are the things that are lost when someone expands too big. And that's where C-suite overlooks the needs of the marketer.
Yeah. And
so I was going to be, sorry, Kat, let me just jump in real quickly. I was going to be a little controversial as the CMO and say, but if an ESP is doing more, surely they need a rebrand. But luckily, I don't have to say that because Chris Herman has jumped in with the controversial question. It says it's simple. Hey, Chris, good to see you or hear you. It's simple. An ESP is outdated. Today's leading brands choose a cross-channel marketing platform that powers unified customer experiences and empowers you to create, optimize, and measure every interaction across the entire customer journey. I love the lift and shift off the website. So Kat, I cut you off there, but
so
it's a valid point.
Yeah, exactly, and that actually perfectly tailors into what I was about to say, and that's. We're now looking then at, and this is away from the shiny tools, I guess, but we're now looking at, the big vendors versus the small to medium, more niche vendors, right? And we actually at Holistic, we did a research on this, and we found out that there's pros and cons for both. As Adiola pointed out, some of the things with the big vendors are a lot more difficult because they're a lot more robust and they've got a bigger feature set, but they're not as easy to use. The small to medium ones are easier to use. But then also what happens is that with the bigger vendors, you have got, so now you're not just an email provider, but you provide all these other functionalities and everything, and they're integrated in to that, and you have no choice. Even if it's a substandard feature set, you have to go with that because that's what your company has bought. As opposed to going with a small niche, more flexible one, then you can go and choose, your specific vendor that you want, that you've gone and done your research and you said that's going to, jump in there and fit in really well with our strategy. So there are pros and cons. And it does come down, and we all understand that, this is what vendors sell on. They sell on shiny tools. They always, and whenever I give my instructions to one of our clients who are, going to be doing a demonstration with a vendor, I'll say, tell them, forget the shiny tools, give them your strategy. This is what we need you to address. Because as Adiola said, the shiny tools are wonderful, but it's the fundamentals that actually happen on a day-to-day basis that can take you 4 hours longer, or it can reduce you and give you an extra 4 hours, in which then means that you can be optimizing and, sending even more campaigns if you want to and making more revenue. So all of that really needs to be taken into consideration. We've got lots of questions.
No, but Herman, how can you possibly be closing deals if you're here, watching this seminar? I would bear that in mind, number one. And number two, Herman used to work for me at Axiom, and that was a typical speech I would give him. Those deals aren't going to close themselves. But I also, what the quote you gave that Skip read is something that sounds like it was something Forrester would say, or again, vendors would say. Brands don't really think that way. Again, you might hear a CMOs tell you that that's what we want, but I'm in the trenches with some of the Fortune 100 brands, and I'm telling you, they don't have these monolithic systems that do all of this stuff. They can't even get all their data in one database, let alone have one platform that manages every possible interaction across every consumer touch point, that all is managed and goes into one database. That's just not the reality. That's right. The aspiration. That's what vendors would love, and that's what CMOs think they should say, but that's not the reality on the ground, and it's not going to be anytime soon. So if vendors don't have a expertise, if all they can do is say, we're this cross-channel, blah, 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 every customer experience, they're going to get beat time and time again by point solutions on the client side that are looking for a point solution. Sorry, I get very exercised.
I'm passionate.
I am passionate.
And breathe.
Drink of
All right, so Kath, you're right. We do have some questions we haven't gotten to yet. Matthew's asked another one, but Spencer got in first, and he's got more upvotes. So this is from Spencer Colas, and this is a great question. So what is the one tool you thought would really take off that did?
I actually thought, sorry, was I supposed to?
Go ahead.
Sorry.
Go for it.
I genuinely thought that AMP for email was gonna kick off and be this shiny, exciting, sexy, innovative thing that I was gonna see across all of my email campaigns. And I just haven't seen the adoption that I thought I was going to see. I have to admit, I was genuinely excited about the possibilities for AMP, especially when I was working with the news publication. I felt like it would be a great way for them to get conversions earlier on, earlier, a lot higher up in the actual sales funnel by just doing it straight from the email, having the click and the conversion right there. And, the integration is really complex, and it's only available with Gmail, and you need a whole different piece of coding to put it in. And, so it's something that just sounds like it's incredibly brilliant and will, for one, increase the click-throughs revenues from an email perspective. But from a setup perspective, yes, it's incredibly daunting and a lot of very time consuming. I would have thought that it would have been streamlined by now so that more brands could adopt it, but it's just kind of fallen a bit flat.
So I take the opposite stance to you. So I've always been an avid critic of it. Just not critic, but I've been watching it and going, yeah, no, I don't see it happening. Because remember, so over 10 years ago, Hotmail Active Use came out. Full suite of amazing things. You could actually make a mini website in your email, totally interactive. They didn't have to go anywhere else. It fell flat, right? Because again, it was only to Hotmail, which back then did have the majority share of the market. Gmail wasn't as big then. It's over 10 years ago. But with AMP, there's lots of challenges, as you just said, right? So there's lots of things. And I think one of the things that did go wrong was that everyone said, awesome, look at this new, geeky thing that we can do, and we can, and they thought about it from their perspective. They didn't think about it. How can we use this to help the customer experience? How can we use this to solve, our challenges, the customer's challenges? How can we use this to make their journey easier? So they actually used it for the wrong things, right? So
and that's it, yeah.
So I think that's one of the reasons, plus everything else that you were saying about the technical difficulties. So yeah.
So Kath, you thought AMP was going to fall flat from the get-go, and you've just said that, which means you've totally not answered Spencer's question, which is.
I've got one. Okay. So
all right, go ahead.
Mine is really, really mundane and boring, but it's dynamic content, right?
Ooh,
right? So everyone's there going, how many, for all of every year we do these predictions. Yes, we're going to do so for the last however many years, 10 years, we've been predicting that personalization via dynamic content and everything is going to be taken off because it's totally awesome. It uses the data and blah, blah, blah. It automates. And so kind of talking about what Adiola was referring to before, but the stage before AI. Yeah. So, but it didn't take off. And the reason why it didn't take off is a little bit like what Chris was saying. Email marketers haven't got their act together. We haven't got our databases together. We haven't got our content libraries together. We haven't got all of these factors. And so it ends up being this, to be able to automate, you have to put in a lot of work. Plus the fact that it's really hard. Back then, they couldn't report on it as well. So you just didn't know which variant anyone was getting. And you weren't able to actually report on individual variants. You actually just reported on in general and all the rest of it. And that was then the unknown. So that was scary for a marketer. They're kind of going, wait, no, I need to be able to see evidence of every email that's going out, and particularly when we're talking about some verticals who literally have to do that for legal reasons. It sort of, so it just never took off like we all thought or hoped it would.
I think a lot of tools that require a huge upfront setup and kind of capital investment of labor is always going to struggle in the email space because I've never met an email marketer that says, "Oh yeah, we've got a couple people sitting idle in our email department."
Yeah,
doesn't happen.
Twiddling our thumbs,
But and this is something we'll get onto in a minute. I want Chris's answer, but Chris already mentioned Axia, and he and I both predated Axia when the company was Digital Impact, and I worked on the first dynamic content program in 2000.
I thought you were going to say in the world.
It probably was. Adiola probably was in the world because it was back in 2000, and it was for I guess I can say I don't even think they exist anymore, but it was for wine.com, and wine is a great vertical to do dynamic content because people's interests and preferences in wine are so prevalent. And they did have the content, but not as much as they wanted, so a large portion of the list got something kind of dynamic, but it was still pretty manual. It wasn't, the platform certainly didn't do it. It was all done in the strategy team. And the rest got something generic because we just didn't have as many content options as we needed, frankly. So Chris, what about you? Something you thought was going to be great that fell flat on its face.
It's there's nothing that an ESP has, when we're done with this and I think back, I'll probably say, no, there was a few, but in general, I think there's nothing that an ESP has introduced that I ever thought this is going to be great. Again, I never thought email open retargeting was going to be big. I never thought refer to a friend, all the, not forward to a friend, but all the links with Facebook and posting, and how we're going to have our email subscribers do the work for us. I never thought that was going to be big. I think, and again, this is something, Skip, you touched on earlier, those shiny new objects that do eventually stick, I think generally come out of third-party innovators and who say, this is what we do. They repeat it over and over again. They refine it. They focus email practice. It's always something for email practitioners, and they stick around long enough that they worm their way into it to the point where you don't remember when it was a bright, shiny object. It just is. And by that time, the ESPs are building it native into their platform if they don't have third-party integrations. Examples of that are things like, what Prasada was, doing as early in AI, what Phrasy's doing. Again, these are really niche companies out of the gate, but they're able to very focus their pitch on that niche thing. Movable ink, another example, Live Intent. These things that were bright and shiny, but again, they weren't necessarily bright and shiny until they were sort of embedded already and have begun to prove themselves. And so that's where, if I'm looking for the next big bright and shiny thing that I think will catch on, and again, there's a number of third parties, bright and shiny things that crashed and burned. Of course, they're not foolproof in any way, shape, or form. But again, there are those that do catch on, and eventually the vendors, as I said, either buy them, do detailed integrations with them, or build it native in their platform. And so, so that's my long-winded answer of what I didn't think would work, but what I do think has worked.
So I want to jump in and defend the platforms. I'm going to call them ESPs. Sorry, Chris.
You should. That's what I call them.
But I want to defend them because the other piece to that is a lot of the stuff that they built, and this is all of them, is in direct response to RFPs. And Chris, I'm sure we'll get into RFPs at some point, as that's your bread and butter. But the number of times, I would sit in a meeting I worked at a couple of ESPs, and you'd have the sales director say to the product director, we need to have XYZ feature because it's come in on 4 RFPs this month. And then it gets built. And it doesn't, and then the marketing department feels compelled to sell it or market it. And the sales department feels compelled to sell it as the best new thing ever. And the reality is, it's as you said. And then on top of that, if you go back 2, 3, 4 years later and look at feature adoption, that feature was never adopted widely. And in fact, not even widely adopted by the people who had it on their RFP.
Well, yeah, that's because RFPs oftentimes have requirements that somebody just came up with and thought, well, let's just toss it in to see if we can change them. The reality, I'm generalizing, but I think we'd all say that it's not uncommon for a brand to buy a Maserati platform and drive it like a Yugo. And for you kids at home, Yugo was or a Trabant.
Hyundai is the modern.
I don't want to badmouth any existing brands. I like Hyundai. Santa Fe, you might find me in one of those one day. But so brands have very big appetites and they want every bell and whistle possible that they might use at some point. And I'm not saying that's wrong. It kind of future-proofs you, but they still end up driving it like a Yugo. And to your point, Skip, which is right. They'll ask for things, the ESPs will build them, but nobody really uses them.
Okay, so let's look at the other side of the coin. So Jules Joseph has given us their side of the coin. So something you thought was a bomb out of the gate that actually took off, was actually widely adopted, very useful.
I would say AI. I genuinely thought, like, who wants a bloody robot, snooping around and everything and potentially making us obsolete and predetermining everything? Like, how is that even possible? Why would we want that? And yeah, people are using AI within their subject lines. They're using it to predict the propensity of how likely someone is going to convert, and then sending them a campaign. And I genuinely just didn't think that we were ready for that type of technology. And it has been adopted in micro ways, I will say. I think the scope in which AI can expand into hasn't been fully adopted, and maybe that's because of resource budget, or perhaps the data just isn't set up in the right way. But I genuinely really thought, nah, this is not going to work, especially my skepticism with machine learning. I love a conspiracy theory. So,
Excellent. So basically, you don't want Arnold Schwarzenegger building your email.
no way. No, I don't even want an Alexa in my house. I turned off Siri. I was like, he's listening far too much.
And we apologize to everybody whose personal devices just kicked off in their homes. Right. Chris and Kat.
One quick tip though, did you know that you can tell Siri to call you something other than your name?
Yes.
Yeah. I used to get mine to call me beautiful.
Daily affirmation.
That's right.
I want to say
Affirmation.
That's right.
I want to say I learned that from Tink Taylor.
Really?
I think he had his Siri calling him something different. I can't remember what it was. If he's on, Tink, let us know. Hit us up in the chat. Right. So, Chris, Kat, something you thought was going to bomb but took off.
All right, I'll jump in. One of the things I thought was going to bomb was cart abandonment triggers, and not beyond the. I mean, let's face it. Who hasn't at some point in time loaded a cart up and abandoned it, hoping that the next email is going to be 10% off to buy what's in your cart? I know I have. So I knew that would work, but the broader application of it, of just going back to somebody who, without an offer and saying, here's what I thought, if you're going to buy it, you're going to buy it. But I'm proven wrong. Cart abandonment, one of the most effective triggers in the retail world. So one of those very few times I was wrong. It's hugely successful.
Yeah, I can remember having all those discussions and saying to people, "Why are we giving an offer in email one?" You've just given share away, and you've just trained your customers to load up their baskets and then not do anything.
Yeah.
Right?
You save a lot of money that way, baby.
Yeah. Kath, how about you? Something that you thought was going to work great?
Go
ahead, Eddie.
Oh no, I was just going to say actually that there was a advert by a bank in the UK called Barclays, and they have this thing called Digital Eagles, and they actually taught everybody the tricks of how to shop online, and one was to wait out for the abandoned cart with the discount. And I was so angry, I was going to email the head of marketing.
It was an ad on TV, national TV.
On TV, yeah.
That's crazy.
I was livid.
You got to wonder how that got through. Clearly, again, we're talking about silos at the other side of the marketing department. How did that get through the marketing department? I'm pretty sure that the commercial side of the bank, the part of the bank that deals with businesses, makes a lot more money than the retail stuff. So you'd think that you wouldn't want to upset your commercial banking customers. But anyway, Kat, something you thought would bomb but didn't.
To be honest, I really can't think of one. I don't know. I'm sorry, I'm just coming up blank. If I'm going to think about this afterwards, and I'll put it in the YouTube if I can think of it. But currently, I cannot think of one that I thought was going to bomb and didn't. No, I think, to be honest, that's not because I'm so clever. It's because I generally have got an open mind, and I'm really happy to understand and test them out and understand that there's different needs for different people and different brands and different products and consumers and all that sort of stuff. So the only one that I really, really have got strong feelings about is actually AMP. And let me tell you, when Hotmail Active Use first came out, I was a huge advocate for it. I was so excited by it. So I think a lot of the AMP, disgruntlement is actually because I was so upset about the Hotmail Active Use, and I've learned it's not going to work.
Hell hath no fury like a woman scorned by Hotmail. I'm going to show my age here, and I'm going to chuck in one that's probably going to make everybody laugh a little bit. But HTML email. I was pretty sure HTML email was not going to work.
Really?
You got to remember when HTML email launched, AOL didn't support it, and AOL was the biggest email email provider.
Yeah.
We are still using 56K modems, right? So if you weren't careful about the weight of your email, it took ages to you could watch it render line by line.
How was it done before?
Just text.
If it wasn't
Text.
And AOL had this kind of hybrid. We called it we called it AOL email, but it allowed for font formatting and hyperlinks, but no images.
Yeah.
No tables. It
was
wouldn't.
the BlackBerry devices when it was literally just plain text and maybe a hero image, but that would take forever to load. So you just have lots of text in it. And do you remember the BlackBerry devices? They couldn't really support. Nope. Am I showing my age?
Yeah.
Did anybody have a BlackBerry?
Yeah, and then you've got issues with Lotus Notes as well. So then you've actually got the email clients as well having difficulty with HTML, and back then AOL was one of the biggest. They had a huge market share, as did Lotus Notes for Businesses. Right. So I totally understand what you're saying there, and this also then indicates that maybe over time, some of the ideas that we're like with AMP. Maybe it's not right for now, but I can hear echo. Can everyone else hear echo? Or is it just me? Okay.
No, I can hear it as well.
Okay.
On you.
Yeah, I don't know why. So maybe it's just a case of they're ahead of the time, and we've still got to wait a few more years for it to really, for technology and everything to catch up for the ideas.
So Adiola, you don't have to worry. Jules just jumped in the chat and says she remembers the BlackBerry issue where the images go black and white, not pixelated.
Jules, thank you. Somebody.
And Ryan, the answer to your question is because you are my friend. Right. So let's get back to Matthew Dunn and maybe bring this back into a little bit more serious direction. So he's talking about in science, open data sets and independent validation, is transformative. You can't, in science, as we talked about a couple weeks ago, if an experiment's not repeatable, you didn't discover it. And he's talking about, marketers either don't or can't validate what the vendors are saying. The vendors share what makes them look good. The vendors share the case studies. We've all been there. They show that this client had an uplift of 323%. They don't share that that's an outlier. Should or could, there be some sort of independent verification of results in the market?
I mean,
go ahead, Adiola.
No, you said Chris. Go, Chris.
I was just gonna say, Chris, is that something you help brands? Like, do you have like a BS stamp, and you hit BS on RFPs when they come in?
No, the thing about brand claims, a well-run RFP has three key phases. However you manage them, we manage them in a certain way. But a well-run RFP is tell us how you do something, show us how you do something, let us see if we can do it for ourselves. So you shouldn't have to. You should never rely on claims of a brand, a vendor being able to do X, Y, Z around and its performance, because it's like the old tire ads. Your performance may vary. That's every single shiny bright object out there its performance is going to vary based on many factors that are outside of the vendor's control. So again, it really comes down to figuring out for yourself that it's going to perform in a way that makes sense for you.
Thanks, Chris. Adiola, Kath, what do you think on that? Independent verification vendors.
You know what? I don't know. I don't know why, but I feel like sticking up for the vendor. I think you have to have a degree of mystery in order to sell. I mean, we're in the business of making money, so are they. I mean, I don't know if I'm gonna be seen as the awful person for saying this, but yes, you want to be able to qualify or quantify what it is that they are saying or claiming, but to a degree, you kind of have to just let them not necessarily be cowboys in the industry, but we have to kind of go with this assumption that we trust the information that they're saying, that they have their client's best interest at heart, and that if you were to interrogate or ask further questions, that they'd be open to sharing, let's say, a document or a white paper that kind of further explains their claims. Because I've seen some crazy things, like this client has seen sales or an ROI of 6,000%, and it's just like, okay, where did this 6,000% come from? Who is this miracle client, and what were they selling? So yeah, I think I don't know. I feel like let them make a little bit of cash, because we're out here we're here to make cash too. And if they scratch my back, scratch theirs. I don't know. I feel like sitting on the fence with this one and kind of being a champion for the vendor. I know that's not normal, but
No, I mean, if you think about it, right, vendors are the ones that create all wonderful new tools that we use, which some of them come out to be our everyday tools, our must-have tools, our we can't live without tools. And if it weren't for them and their experimentation, they're coming up with an idea, dipping their toe in the water, saying, what do you think about this? We've done a case study and everything. And then us taking it up and saying, well, that could be of use for us because we have this challenge and it could address and help with that challenge. Let's go and test it. Then, so we are incredibly reliant and indebted to the vendors. Yeah. So because without all of these new functionalities, we'd still just be, doing the same things. And let me tell you, the consumers are beyond that. A lot of the tools and features that are actually being created are in some ways consumer-led because they have got particular needs that they're wanting to be met, which aren't being met, nowadays. And one of those being customer centricity. I've got the echo again, and I've changed and everything. So I agree with you, Adiola. But I think we can't put everything on the shoulders of the vendors. They're vendors. They're doing a totally awesome job. They're doing what they need to do. And we as marketers now need to do what we need to do. We can't let them shoulder all the responsibility. We have a role in this as well, and that's what I was saying. So that if we are having a demonstration, you have to state what your needs are, what challenges you have, and you need to ask the vendor specifically, how are you going to help me with that? And by the way, I don't want to look at any of the shiny new tools, if that is what you want. Otherwise, you may want to be looking at some shiny new tools or say, hey, what have you got that is unique to you and no other vendor has that's going to differentiate you? And we'll, review them and see if they're going to help us with our challenges, our goals and everything. So it's, marketers have to take their own responsibility as well as, we're all in it together, aren't we?
Absolutely. absolutely. It's interesting. I was involved in a pitch once, and we were given 15 minutes in the pitch to show anything we wanted. Everything else in the pitch was incredibly scripted, incredibly prescribed. We had to do a demo, and the problem was the demo things that we had to demo got quite repetitive because it was like layering an extra thing on, but in our platform, but not in every platform. And they made us go through all those repetitive steps. We had to show from start to finish each of these 8 use cases, and then we had 15 minutes to show anything we wanted. And we were showing a new feature that we were rolling out, and got about a minute into it, and the lady running the pitch from the client side said, "I'm going to stop you there. The interface of that is a different color. I don't believe it's part of the core platform." And she wouldn't. That's it. We're done. They all got them left.
Wow.
Yeah. So to Cass' point of take the responsibility to not be showing the shiny thing that you may not actually need yet. They were, hardcore about it. It was the weirdest situation I think I'd ever been in. Anyway, we're going to have to wrap it up there, but let's keep the conversation going because this is a great conversation. Let's keep the conversation going over on the roundtables. So, unfortunately, just bear with me here while I get the, hopefully the slide share will work. So, first off, please let us know what you thought. Put some notes in the chat, and Jonathan and the other organizers will pick those off. We'll integrate those comments into our future events. And join me in giving a big thanks again to our gold sponsors, Iterable and Validity, and our silver sponsors, RPE Origin and Email Expert. And of course, a tremendous thank you to Adiola, Chris, and Kath for providing their invaluable insights. Most of all, I want to thank you for spending some time with us this afternoon. We've had a great time. We hope you've really enjoyed the conversation and gotten some interesting insight out of it. Now, Kath and I are going to be back on the 25th with Leah Palumba of IL3X, Alice Cornell of Change.org, and Guy Hansen from Validity. And we're going to be talking about growing a healthy database. Now, for those of you who've joined us live, we've set up some roundtables, which you may have noticed when you first came in today. This is your opportunity to continue the conversation with our panelists and meet other marketers who are facing similar challenges. Now, unfortunately, well, I don't know if this is unfortunate or not. I don't think, Adiola, you can join us in the roundtables. Is that right?
No.
Okay, so unfortunately, Adiola can't join us in the roundtables. That's a shame, but don't worry. Our special surprise guest is Ryan Phelan of RPE Origin. So he's been on. He will be hosting one of the roundtables along with Chris, Kath, and myself. So go find a table, turn on your sound and video, and be part of the conversation.
Wait, we forgot one thing.
What?
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah. All right. Hang on. Let me bring you up. Big time there, Mr. Marriott.
So you are a gentleman.
So Chris promised to tell Adiola the coolest thing.
Yeah, one of the questions Skip asked off camera was that he might ask us about what's next. What's the next big, bright, shiny thing that we see coming? And here we go, Adiola. What I see coming is there's a vendor that's developing a product that goes beyond send time optimization. Now, if you think of send time optimization, the most rudimentary form of that is we're going to send emails when people generally open emails. On your list, generally open emails. Level 2 of that was we're going to send emails to an individual based on their particular open behavior. Next generation of this is called live optimization, where the email goes out when that person is actually online. And how do they know they're online? Because they're opening other emails. So now it's going to be targeting people who are online right then and there, which in theory, Adiola, increases the chance that they're going to open your email because, again, they're online. It's going to pop up in their inbox. So I think this is going to be huge.
It is.
And I
but
wasn't just excited about send time optimization, but I think this is going to be huge. And there's a vendor that's in that is in beta of it, and so watch this space for more news about that.
Is this an Arnold Schwarzenegger style thing? The whole AI robot. Okay.
Yep.
I'm still impressed, but thanks for sharing.
All right.
It was totally worth waiting to get the facial reaction from Adiola. That was great.
That's why I didn't tell her. I knew. I wanted it live. I wanted the audience to see that live.
Yeah, no, that was awesome.
All right. So thanks, Chris.
All right.
Folks, don't forget to join us on the roundtables and be in with a chance to win the Kindle version of Cast's book, Holistic Email Marketing. Title there for a second. But if you can't join us, we'll see you in 2 weeks. Until then, be safe and make good choices.